Nearly 3 out of 4 women have no idea about one change they can make to drastically lower their risk of breast cancer. But today, we are talking all about it. Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hello, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And today, our goal is simple: to beat breast cancer. And joining us to make that goal a reality is our dear friend, a breast cancer surgeon, a leading prevention expert, the one, the only, Dr. Kristi Funk. So let's set the plate. Let's talk about what it is we're going to be talking about. Number one, the results of a survey conducted by Morning Consult and us here at the Physicians Committee that shows that 72% of women are completely unaware of the connection between diet and breast cancer, and how your diet can significantly reduce your risk of developing the disease. Also on tap today, we're going to be talking about the best breast cancer foods, the foods that can then cause cancer as well, the dairy cancer connection, talking to your doctors about cancer. That's very important. And of course, the latest trends in breast cancer as well. And if you have a question for Dr. Funk, post it in the comments or in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can when we open up the doctor's mailbag in just a little bit. So let's get going right now and welcome Dr. Funkalicious, Kristi Funk, back to the exam room. How you doing, Dr. Funk?
I'm great. How are you, Glamour Boy?
I'm doing phenomenal.
The weight loss champion is just all glam to me.
I mean, look, you coined the term. That's so daggone funny. I love it. And so now when we send emails to each other, I always sign them Glamour Boy when I'm addressing them. But anyway, let's talk about breast cancer, Dr. Funk. The survey I was mentioning, the one that we did here at the Physicians Committee, only 28% of women say that a healthy diet can reduce their risk of breast cancer. 72%, the other 72% completely oblivious to this. Why is it, in your estimation, that more doctors aren't having this conversation with patients?
I think the doctors, well, we know they didn't get a lick of nutrition in medical school, right? So they didn't kind of grow up in their medical training thinking that nutrition had anything to contribute to health versus illness. And then when you're all grown up and you finish your, ready for it, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school. For me, it was 5 years of residency and then a breast cancer surgical fellowship. You finally are about, 32 years old, ready to make $1 to save your, to stop you from all that debt that you're bleeding. And if someone along the way had mentioned for more than 1 minute that nutrition mattered for something other than creating ATP in the Krebs cycle, maybe you would have something to share with your patients. But it is completely now up to you on your own, just from your own devices and interest in maximizing health to stumble into how food matters. So doctors don't talk to their patients about food because they themselves had a hamburger and fries for lunch.
All right, let's back that up. You said a couple of words that some of the exam roomies may not be familiar with yet. ATP and Krebs cycle. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, so simply put, your mitochondria, the powerhouses of every single cell, use sugar that you consume in your eating to turn it into usable energy. Obviously, every single one of your cells, in order to do its function in your body and then to replace itself, there's a lot of energy happening inside of you. That's why you have a basal metabolic rate, right? A baseline number of calories that you burn when you're not even trying. You're just sitting around doing your thing and burning calories, because ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is made in these mitochondria so that you can power through your day. And that's it. So that's the end of nutrition 101. You know as much as your doctor. You're welcome.
Okay, let's learn a little bit more about this survey. There was more than just that question about diet overall. Also asked about specific foods that people may think can help to prevent cancer. 23% said vegetables could. Only 16% said that fruits could help in that arena as well. Number one, before I ask you if that surprises you at all, are fruits and vegetables equally powerful when it comes to preventing cancer?
They are not. Vegetables win.
Ooh.
Fruits on average, if you look at studies, confer about an 8 to 10% protective effect for high versus low consumers of fruit. But then there are clear front runners in the fruit category, and that would be the berries. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, acai, all you don't have to get all fancy crazy with the, for example, Indian gooseberry, which is at the tippity top of the antioxidant scale. Do you know there was this study? I love it. It was 3,100 foods were analyzed for their antioxidant content, everything from coconuts to Coca-Cola. And the tippity top, which was 124 times the antioxidant content of the blueberry, was, oh, I already said it, the Indian gooseberry. That comes to you in usable form as powder called amla, AMLA. Kind of obsessed with it, but you don't have to be. You can just have frozen berries. Frozen are picked at the peak of freshness and, then frozen. So they are just as powerful, if not more so, studies show, than fresh. So when I hear you think to yourself, oh, berries are so expensive, it's like $5.50 for a 1 pound basket, which, by the way, when I shop for my 3 teenage sons, which I do every other day, I buy about 8 1 pound things of berries, 8, and they are gone within 48 hours.
I believe
That's
it.
true. Yeah.
I believe it. I get my frozen blueberries from Costco, and it's like $8 for a 3 pound bag, which is really not a bad price. If I go to a regular grocery store, it's something like $14 for the same size. So Costco gets the thumbs up. They also have a beautiful bag of frozen mixed berries as well. I think there's some blackberries, maybe some strawberries in there, as well as the blueberries. All of that's really going to go to your health.
As long as we're, promoting Costco, they also have an antioxidant blend that I love. And the blueberries you're talking about are organic to boot. And the reason why frozen can be better than fresh is that the cell walls are already lysed by that freezing process. So the polyphenols get into your bloodstream faster. To finish the comparison, though, of fruit versus vegetables, studies generally show on average that high versus low vegetable consumers will have about a 25% decrease in breast cancer. So that's why the fruits may be 10 versus 25. So vegetables win. And there are individual foods within the vegetable family that can even be higher than that. For example, one of my favorite studies, because our African-American sisters are always underrepresented in our studies. There was one study of 52,000 African-American women, and they followed them for 12 years. There was a 44% decrease in breast cancer for those who simply ate 6 servings of cruciferous vegetables a week. So 1 a day of your kingdom that has like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, spinach, arugula, etc. So that's higher than 25.
Wow. Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say a 44% reduced occurrence of breast cancer just by eating 6 servings a week of cruciferous vegetables? Wow.
Yep.
That's pretty significant. So then the cruciferous would be the kings of prevention. Are there some others that can really still pack a punch?
Oh, absolutely. So let me give you my top 5. So cruciferous vegetables, king. Soy, which we can debunk yet again, because in the survey that you were talking about, 17% of women thought soy was bad for you. I think it was 16% said good for you, or vice versa, within 1%, right? Very split there. And everybody else was, I don't really know. So there's a lot of confusion about soy and some literal just wrong answer. Soy is a breast cancer superfood when it comes to protection. So absolutely do not shy away from it. Always organic. So to just round out the list without deep diving into any of them, we've got cruciferous vegetables, soy, berries, which I already mentioned as powerhouses, flaxseed, always ground because your body will just poop it out if you eat it as a whole seed. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do for number 5? There's so much to choose from. It's not going to be a food per se. It's going to be a drink because it is oh so powerful. Green tea, matcha green tea in particular.
What is it about the green tea? Is it the antioxidants in there that are so powerful? What makes it your cancer-fighting powerhouse?
There is a phytochemical, a nutrient in green tea called epigallocatechin gallate. Are you impressed?
Say that again 3 times fast.
epigallocatechin gallate, epigallocatechin gallate, epigallocatechin gallate. For the win!
You win a prize.
EGCG is the abbreviation, and that, my friends, is so powerful at staving off cancer that, albeit in petri dishes, I want to qualify that, but if you can do it in a petri dish, what can it do in you? And they have shown some, human studies about the power of EGCG and green tea as an antioxidant, and the levels skyrocket as soon as you drink a cup of tea, green tea. The polyphenols are just in your bloodstream within an hour, so high. But back to the petri dish farm. So we've got breast cancer cells laid onto a petri dish and drip a little water on them. Okay, nothing happens as it shouldn't. Then you drip a little FIP on them. FIP. I don't even know what that stands for. I'm just telling you, it is a potent carcinogen that you get from eating meat, and particularly poultry, chicken, okay, and eggs. You drip some FIP on there and the cancer cells skyrocket in growth because it is a huge growth promoter, as the carcinogen that it is, from eating chicken. Then you drip some EGCG on the cells, nothing happens because it's a neutral, happy cell. And then when you put something happy on it, it's just happier, but doesn't do anything, right? So that's your control. Water doesn't do anything and green tea doesn't do anything, but you put FIP on there and these aren't just any cells that they were studying. These were breast cancer stem cells, both estrogen positive and estrogen negative. Stem cells are like the little masterminds behind all breast cancer recurrence and mortality. They are what we call pluripotent. They have magical powers to migrate and proliferate and to differentiate, all these words that end in ate, into like whatever your body needs them to be. But when they are captured and overtaken by a malignancy, now it becomes the big threat. The other thing about stem cells is they do not divide quickly. And pretty much everything we throw at cancer in the chemotherapy world is aimed at fast division rates. So that's great. If you have a really quickly moving cancer, the chemo is going to be highly effective at eradicating it. But the stem cell, like, it goes into the corner and just hides and waits and watches all that chemo go by. You can't see me. This awful game of hide and seek is happening. And then all of a sudden it emerges 2 years, 10 years after all that treatment's over. And it's like, miss me. And it clones itself. And it can migrate and metastasize. Okay, so back to our petri dishes, they were made of stem cells, estrogen positive and negative. Drip ECG, EGCG, nothing happens. Drip FIP, growth. Drip FIP, growth. Drip EGCG, suppresses it right away. Literally, matcha green tea has the power to eradicate stem cells on a petri dish. I think it can do the same thing inside of you, because in human studies, not looking at stem cell eradication specifically, but just looking at high versus low consumers of green tea. What's your story? Do you live longer? Do you not? There was one study in particular that looked at 3 cups of green tea a day in stages 1, 2, and 3 breast cancer patients. And for stage 1 patients, 3 cups of green tea a day dropped breast cancer recurrence by 57%. 3 cups a day in stage 2 was a 37% drop. And then sadly, somehow it didn't make an impact on stage 3.
Wow. That packs a heck of a punch there. That packs a heck of a punch. So when you're talking about the green tea, I'm assuming you're talking about just a straight cup of green tea, not really dressing it up with a whole lot of sugars and other flavors and things like that, correct?
Correct. You don't want to then send, refined sugars and a bunch of dairy-based creamers flying through your bloodstream at the same time as the green tea, because then it will probably just duke it out with those oxidants and never get to the stem cell, right?
Speaking of dairy, what is the connection between dairy and breast cancer? That also came up in the survey, if I'm not mistaken.
It did. So dairy's confused. It does have some healthful properties. So, for example, calcium and vitamin D and butyrate, lactoferrin, conjugated linoleic acid, these are good things to have inside of you. We, as plant-based consumers, get all of these wonderful things from other sources, but they are in dairy. And that has to be counterbalanced then by things that are negative in dairy, including hormones. So dairy cows have they're making milk. So they're in a pregnancy or post-pregnancy state constantly. The second they're not, they're useless. They're made into beef and bye-bye, right? So these dairy cows are living impregnated, which is about 10 times the normal level of estrogen when you're pregnant. And all of that, not all of it, but that estrogen is getting into the milk, and it particularly loves saturated fat, the estrogens. So this is a high estrogenic state getting into your milk. So we've got hormones happening. We have IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, which is the biggest growth promoter inside our bodies, screaming at cells to grow. And that is elevated in response to consuming dairy, be it milk, butter, cheese, ice cream. It has saturated fat. It has pesticides, all these residues. Most milk is not organic and products aren't. And so when they're not, of course, these animals are eating GMO feed that's just laden with antibiotics and pesticides. And it has aflatoxins in it. So there's your balancing act between good things and bad things. And therefore, I'd be remiss to say that, to make it sound like every single study looking at dairy shows a cancer promoting effect. It doesn't. They kind of land deleterious, neutral, or even like kind of protective in some studies. So you really have to dig through the weeds to figure out what's going on. And one of the things going on is what I said, the estrogens are highly concentrated in saturated fat. So there was a great study, Life After Cancer Epidemiology Study, so LACE for short. And they looked at just under 1,900 early stage breast cancer patients and followed them for 11.8 years. And in that study, what they found was that high fat dairy consumers, now I want you to pay attention to the amounts because it's a very reasonable amount. If you ate 1 or more servings of high fat dairy a day versus not soy milk versus less than half a serving of high fat dairy a day, you had a 49% increase in all cause mortality. If you ate, this is a different study, another study looked at if you ate butter, margarine, or lard on a daily basis. And I'd like to highlight that margarine is in there, right? Because we do have vegan butters that qualify as margarine. They're filled with these highly saturated fat, bad for you inflammatory oils. These breast cancer patients had a 67% increase in recurrence and a 212% increase in breast cancer mortality. I'll say that again. So if you had butter, margarine, or lard on a daily basis and had breast cancer, you're way more likely to have that cancer recur and or kill you for consuming those foods. Okay. So it really does matter. There's a couple other studies that I like to look at because they're fairly large volume with good follow-up. A third one, and then we'll be done with this quoting studies in dairy. There were 4,400 breast cancer patients. They had not had a recurrence. And over the following 7 years, 3% of them died. When they looked at the dietary analysis of who died and who didn't, those with the highest versus lowest trans fat intake. So let's highlight the fact that trans fat is found exclusively in meat and dairy, had 78% more death. And again, this wasn't high versus no trans fat, just highest versus lowest. And that same comparison in the saturated fat category had 41% more death. So dairy's bad for you. It's deadly. Dairy is deadly.
Let me ask you this. So something like a coconut yogurt, which is absolutely, fair game for somebody eating a plant-based diet, that still also has a lot of saturated fat in it. Would that not have the same amount of risk as dairy yogurt because of the fact that there's not going to be that estrogen in there as well?
Probably you're right. I don't think that that's been figured out to that level of detail. Just be wary of saturated fat in general, right? Especially as a breast cancer thriver. you want to keep your total fat consumption to be somewhere around 10 to 15% of total calories. I'm also not a fan of like being hypervigilant about that. We can't make eating a full-time job. Just eat and eat well, and know that when you're eating whole foods, you are minimizing saturated fat, right? You're going to find very small quantities in your avocados and olives. But when you get into the processed plant-based foods, that's when the fats sneak in. And, you know, for yogurts, my kids, my boys are older now. They're 15 and they're really hyper vigilant about ingredients. And I guess I did this to them, but they actually call me out. And I was buying some yogurts that were coconut based, and they were like, "Mom, there's 9 grams of fat in this little container. What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh my gosh." Well, I wouldn't eat it, of course, but I figured they're athletic growing boys, like just a little bit of more saturated fat, live it up while you can, right? But no, we're back to the soy milk based ones that have 0.5 grams of saturated fat, if you're wondering.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay, since that kind of opens the door for other foods that you would definitely want to put in that no-go category, because we got our best list. You gave us your top 5. I'm assuming dairy might make your top 5 foods to avoid. What else might you put on there?
You know, for sure, all processed meat. So processed meats include sausages and bacon. But what really got me when I first was learning about how nutrition affects health was that your organic sliced turkey breast in the deli section is also processed meat. So anything that you would put as a carnivore on a charcuterie tray is the worst possible thing that you could put into your body. So absolutely eliminate all processed meat. There was an NIH AARP study. So it looked at 193,000 postmenopausal women, followed them for just over 9.4 years. And they found a 25% increase in breast cancer in those who were processed meat consumers. So that's a definite no-no. No. The next thing is red meat. And one of the main reasons why red meat, it's the nitrates in processed meat that seem to be the big culprits. The big culprit in my research for red meat, there are many. It's got cholesterol and saturated fat, and then it elevates IGF-1 and does have some amount of hormones. I will tell you, it doesn't have an outrageous amount of estradiol, which, by the way, the reason why I keep mentioning hormones, if you don't know, is that 80% of all breast cancers are fed and fueled by estrogen. So more of it is a risk factor. But the real evildoer inside red meat is that you are not eating steak tartare. Maybe you are, but you probably aren't. And when you cook your meat, you are creating 2 extremely potent carcinogens, heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These substances are carcinogenic. They're directly toxic to the genes, the DNA of your cells. And so much so that one study showed that people who liked their meat well done or even medium rare or burnt to a crisp, but particularly the well done and burnt to a crisp people, if they ate hamburgers, they had a 54% increase in breast cancer. Bacon was a 64% increase in breast cancer. Beef steak was 121% increase in breast cancer. And if they consumed all 362% increase in breast cancer.
Wow.
So this was again, those who chose to eat their meat well done or burnt to a crisp versus those who ate their meat rare or actually medium rare qualified. So again, imagine how staggering those numbers would be, knowing what we know, if you were comparing the very well done meat eaters to the bean burger person.
Holy smoke. So bacon cheeseburger, probably not going to make your healthy foods list this year, Dr. Funk. Oh my goodness gracious. A well done one at that. That is Amazing. That is a nugget right there that you just dropped on us. Well done.
Yeah. I'll give you one more because
Please do.
everybody tends to think that chicken is a healthy option instead of red meat. So they may have shied away from red and processed meat, knowing the things we talked about just now. And they say, but chicken's okay, right? Well, no. So we've got things we already talked about. So let's reintroduce them in a short list. We've got IGF-1, the big daddy growth promoter that makes things grow cancer, grow metastases, elevated in response to eating the chicken. It's filled with cholesterol and saturated fat, number 2. 3, you're cooking it. So when you're talking about the red meats being burnt, you're probably thinking about grilling hamburgers and having that char. So high heat barbecues cause the heterocyclic amines and PAHs. It also forms within chicken cooked at, I forget how you cook chicken now, it's been so long, 375 degrees for 30 minutes in the oven. They're there too, in the middle of the meat. It's a combination of the creatinine in meat with heat that makes the badness happen. So it doesn't really care if you took a long time to make it happen or if you did it in 5 minutes on a grill. So we've got those carcinogens in chicken. I mentioned having FIP in chicken, but now we also have weird crap, right? Think about when you buy meat. There's no label with ingredients. It's all a secret, a true secret. The animal agriculture industry has no obligation, nor do they freely volunteer information to tell us what is in the meat. What those animals eat gets in the meat, and it does get in you. I have a whole story about Zeranol we could go into. That's the most potent and let me try that again. Zeranol is the most potent synthetic estrogen that man has ever made, and it is the most prevalent hormone in all of our human food. And it is injected into cattle behind their ears to make them grow fat fast. And I can tell you a story that takes us to Milan, Italy, if we want to go to Europe with that. But let me focus on the chicken. We don't know what's in it. So there was a study that ground up chicken feathers because scientists were like, what are they feeding these birds? And do you know this study, Chuck?
No, please share. No, drop the knowledge on us, Doc.
Just drop it. Okay. They found illegal antibiotics, including fluoroquinolones. All right. Well, whatever. So you just gave me an antibiotic that's been taken off the market. We're fine. Arsenic. Because why? Well, why would we have arsenic? It turns out that arsenic gives chicken that kind of pretty pink color, but it kills off the parasites like the worms and grossness that are otherwise in the chicken. So we need some arsenic in there. It had acetaminophen, a little Tylenol, because they get, a headache being cooped up all day. Prozac, because they're depressed, getting cooped up all day. Actually, the Prozac also might be as an antidepressant to motivate them to try to stand up their fat little chicken bodies to make it over to where the feed is, to be able to go get their feed, because they're not motivated to stand up and move. Antifungals, an antihistamine, a sex hormone, and caffeine. Wake up, little chickie. You got to eat. Jesus. No, all that crap was in the feathers. And the feathers, because waste not, want not, are ground up and put back into their chicken feed. Yes, they feed the living chickens, the dead chickens, feathers.
I don't know where to go with that, other than I'm really glad I haven't had chicken in 10 years. That's mind-blowing. My goodness gracious. Okay. We got to push on. We got to cheer up the people. So let's kind of do a mixed bag here. I want to talk to you about the latest breast cancer trends. Some studies or the latest report just came out, showed, it's a mixed bag, where we saw some improvements, but among some certain demographics, we actually saw an increased rate of mortality. What is the latest on that front?
Okay, so just October 1st, 2024, the American Cancer Society came out there with their 35 years worth of analysis comparing breast cancer rates in the last 35 years. So what is the lay of the land? Well, good, cheerful news. Mortality is down 44%. This is owing to earlier detection and better treatments. The vast majority of the billions of dollars that are raised in October and all year round for breast cancer the vast majority of those funds go into research for better drugs, which honestly is great. Of course, I want women existing currently with cancer to have better options down the road. But it kind of pisses me off because it's short-sighted. Again, we have great treatments. Stage 1 breast cancer, for example, when it's localized in your breast, hasn't gone to nodes or beyond, the 5-year survival rate is 99%. We're doing really good work at keeping people alive and quote unquote curing. You rarely, except for certain forms of cancer, get to know for sure that you're cured. We can talk about that later if we want. I have ideas on how to feel better about the current state of affairs for yourself in terms of blood analysis. But the point that I'm making is that we really should be focusing on maximal risk reduction because there's so much power there. And it drives me a little cuckoo bird that every single time these reports come out, they're like, gee, we need to do research into why the incidence is rising. So yay us that mortality is down 44% in the last 35 years. However, the incidence of breast cancer since 2012 has been going up 1% per year, with approximately 310,000 breast cancer cases predicted for 2024. So 1% of that is 3,100 additional invasive breast cancers last year, this year, next year, with no end in sight. Particularly, this new report shows as new news, those under 50 are increasing their breast cancer rates at 1.4% per year. And even more staggering is the increase in Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, somewhere between 2.5 and 2.7% increase per year. So the conclusion is always a little bit of like, scratching my head, wondering why is that happening? We really need to look into this. And then they kind of don't. That's not entirely fair. They do, but we already know the answer. Like, I love more research just to prove the point and hammer it home even harder. Yeah. But people, I can answer the question, why is breast cancer becoming more and more frequent? Why is breast cancer happening to those younger at earlier ages? Why? I have a one-word answer, and it is the right answer. Epigenetics. I'm sorry if that's a confusing big person answer, but it is the one word that encompasses the answer. Why? Because inherited genetics are one thing. That's what you get from mom and dad. It is the actual makeup of your DNA. You cannot change or alter it, at least currently. And that accounts for 5 to 10% of all breast cancers. Only 5 to 10%, I'm going to say it again, of all women with breast cancer get to blame mom and dad for giving them a faulty gene such as BRCA or CHEK2 or PALB2, etc. 90 to 95% of all women with breast cancer don't have an inherited gene mutation. What they do have is a unwittingly, not casting blame, I'm enlightening, I'm empowering, an unwittingly caused mutation through diet and lifestyle choices and environmental exposures. That is what epigenetics means. It is the alteration to how gene signaling pathways function in your body to be able to correct cancer cells. We make millions of tiny mutated cells all day long in our bodies, and an intact functional immune system is really masterful, like zeroing in on that bad cell, fixing it or throwing it out, and then moving on to the next one, while you just move on with your day cancer-free. You're never cancer-free. You got cancer cells all day long in your body, but your body, when you treat it like the temple that it is, with nutritious anti-cancer foods, with anti-cancer activity, with anti-cancer thinking, with anti-cancer things in your environment that you touch and breathe and put on your skin, etc., then your immune system can do its thing and cancer isn't a reality for you.
Right.
And that's what epigenetics is. It is the alteration because of what you're eating, thinking, drinking, touching, the alteration in your DNA's ability to get repaired when it goes awry. And that's under your control. Now, not every last thing. I also want to go to the other side of, I like to liken it to the bell curve, where you've got your genetic predisposition, really hard to overrule that through, killing cancer with kale. On the other hand, you have someone who has no gene mutation, but it also just doesn't make sense. She is doing everything. Dr. Funk, I'm everything you just said. I eat plant-based. I'm normal body weight. I exercise like a fiend. I'm super zened out since birth. I don't have any stress. I have only organic products in my home, straight down to my toothpaste. Like everything in my life is as clean as it could be. And yet here I am with this cancer. That situation really throws me for a loop. It makes me sad and mad because I want it to be simple and straightforward, and it is not. But those are thankfully outliers in the small extremes, the percentages. So if we've got 5 to 10% here, and I'll give it 5% there, we have a big fat 80% in the middle or more. That is truly controllable, reversible, maybe even, dare I say the word, preventable. And that's exciting. That's cool. That, my friends, is the entire premise, the whole reason for the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. And that is to empower women to understand that they have control over this disease. Even if you already are a breast cancer thriver, we can always have room for improvement. Just showing off the cute tea.
Yeah, it's all about the swag.
Should we just transition into what you can do, what this campaign's all about?
Yeah, let's beat breastcancer.org. I think you might be able to get some swag on there too, but certainly there's a ton of information, a ton of resources, and a full list of all of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer rallies that we're holding around the country all month long. What else is up there, Dr. Funk?
We have resources. So all you want to do, let's beat breastcancer.org. You sign up. It's entirely free. We're not going to hound you. We're just going to send you the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. And what those two tools are the starter kit on how to get started on following the four-pronged approach to beating breast cancer. And we're going to send you a free e-cookbook with not to miss oh so delicious recipes that have been curated just for you. The four-pronged approach to beating breast cancer is to follow these 4 ways of living. Eat a whole food plant-based diet, exercise regularly, maintain ideal body weight, and minimize or eliminate alcohol. Research has clearly shown that adherence to these 4 ways of living can drop breast cancer at least in half. And in my research, I think it's higher. But I also know there are other things that push that scale toward or away from cancer. These 4 are the boulders. If you have one of those 4 things with a lot of room for improvement, everything else is like a pebble. Yeah, it can tip a scale that's just balancing, if you have a pebble. But if you already have a boulder, you have good work to do right there. If you are eating animal protein and animal fats, what if I just have a little organic chicken and some wild-caught salmon? Well, what if you didn't? It would be better. So there's room for some improvement there. If you are near your ideal body weight, but have that last stubborn 5 or 10 pounds, let's push through. Let's figure out what is it? What's the sneak attack in your world that is keeping those pounds on? 2 quick tips there. It could be the oils. Oils sneak in and add fat and make you fat. So have a really good look at any processed foods that you're eating. Read those labels, see what the fat content is. And if you think you need to saute and cook with oils, try a month without it. Do broth saute, water saute. See if you even notice a difference in the taste. Oil really very infrequently adds that extra zing and deliciousness to the dish. It's really just adding 120 calories of pure fat. Next up, exercise. Can you do more? Can you mix it up and do something different? Like we're talking about pushing past those last stubborn pounds or the first stubborn 50 pounds. You may have a lot to lose. That's kind of fun in a way when you're truly, BMI over 24.9 overweight and you employ these changes. I mean, you check more than anyone. I should stop talking and let you just take over, but pounds, they do melt off. The first real, like, it's very incentivizing because your body's so excited about these changes and the absence of the inflammation and the excess fat through the consumption of processed foods and meat and dairy, and through the inactivity. When you just put a little saunter after dinner into your daily life, even if it's for 10 minutes, I'll take it. But can we do more? Again, I'm after those last few pounds that are so stubborn. Maybe our activity level needs to be altered. And then alcohol, that's a real doozy because I can go on about alcohol for multiple reasons, but again, I'm right now talking about those extra pounds. So
Yeah.
the alcohol itself is caloric. I think a glass of wine has something like 150 calories. And then if you're having more than one glass and you're having it sort of as your daily reward for making it through a stressful day, to just take the edge off of this evening as you wind down, to have a nice meal, spend time with family, maybe watch your favorite show, whatever you're doing, for many people, it is a way of life and a habit they've formed to have that glass of wine with that evening activity, which is adding calories. And especially if you go to glass number 2, we double up on the calories, but we also double up on dropping inhibitions. And now all of a sudden, it's not quite the like pot-induced munchies, but you start to go like, now I'm just feeling more relaxed and I want to treat myself. So you're going to treat yourself with some crudité? I don't think so. We're not going to treat ourselves with raw veggies. And if you are unlucky enough to have a big bag of chips or pretzels in the house, or some salty nuts that you would eat by the handful and should only have less than about a quarter cup of raw nuts and not salted, in come more calories. And you could be adding those calories, of course, at a time where it's winding down time. Like you're going to go to bed an hour after you just pile all that into your body. So there are always ways that we can look for, chinks in the armor that we can then repair and make our lives healthier. That is the longest answer to the LBBC campaign I've ever given. I'm sorry.
That was pretty good. That was a solid 6-minute answer there. That's pretty good. You're not going to get that on network TV. I'll tell you that right now. But listen, we only have a couple of minutes left here. So I want to go ahead and open up the doctor's mailbag. There's a lot of great questions from the exam roomies who are joining us live today. Number one, there are a couple of roomies right now wondering about fasting and whether there's any research there on the connection between fasting and any effect that it may have on cancer prevention or recurrence.
There is, and it does. So there are 2 types of fasting. There's daily fasting, intermittent fasting, which you can do as a 5-2, like eat 5 days a week, and then 2 days you have fewer than 500 calories. You could do intermittent, where there's like 16-8 is the most common one, where people might stop eating at 7 p.m. and then eat again at 11 a.m. So they go 16 hours without eating and then have an 8-hour eating window. But as good as those activities are, because overall they may curb your total caloric intake and it gives your body a break from the stress-inducing task of digesting a meal, it doesn't show really true cancer prevention. That I've come across. However, there's a study from 2015 that looked at women with early stage breast cancer. And there was a 34% decrease in recurrence for those who didn't eat for 13 or more hours daily. So they practiced intermittent fasting, intentionally or not, at a minimum of 13 hours, and more was better. So if you've already had breast cancer, I think 16-8 is definitely the way to go. More prolonged fasting is more interesting and more beneficial, but harder to do, of course. And that is because at around the 72-hour mark of not eating, or at least not creating activity in your protein sensing pathways. There's a pathway called that's activated by it's called mTOR, and that pathway is activated by eating protein and carbohydrates. It's also hyperactive in response to eating meat and dairy. So if you want to calm that protein sensing pathway down, you extend life. So if you've never heard of Prolon, Prolon, our folks over at USC in the Center for Longevity, this comes from the work of a Dr. Walter Longo. They have shown repeatedly in many research studies that if you go into a prolonged 5-day fast, you will get a eightfold increase in stem cell production when you eat again. Stem cells we've talked about. Now, when they are healthy stem cells, they get to be whatever your body most needs, which is most likely highly functional new recruits to the immune system, right? Your biggest defense against all disease. So you want to do these prolonged fasts. It's kind of difficult. Prolon is a great way, I think, to do it because you get to eat while you fast. It's about 800 calories a day. It's not the best tasting food in the world, but it is food and I don't mind it. And the science does show that you are able to get into autophagy, which is auto, self, phage, eat, where your immune system is really scavenging those free radicals and inflammatory molecules that allow cancer to form and recur. So try to get into 5-day fasting every 3 to 4 months to optimize your immune system.
All right. Next question. See if we can knock this out pretty quickly. Video 1000 Nights at 12:35. Is tofurkey deli slices dangerous like a processed meat, or could it be safe like tofu? What do you think, Doc?
Safe like tofu, not as healthy as tofu because it is processed and the soy protein isolate has really lost all of its isoflavone power, but way, way, way better than an actual hot dog.
All right. And let's end on a high note. Let's see if we can bring some positivity to Crystal's life at 12:44. She writes, I'm really struggling with a stage 3 breast cancer diagnosis. I'm looking for some hope here. I'm just not getting it from my oncologist. I'm sure that you've had patients like Crystal, Dr. Funk, who come into your office and say something very similar. What would you offer in terms of words of hope and wisdom to someone like Crystal?
Oh, Crystal, there's so much power over stage 3. It is not stage 4. And if it's out and you've done your treatments, you may even consider yourself just in a cured state and you are maintaining it through diet and lifestyle. Please join the letsbeatbreastcancer.org campaign. Let us help you employ these 4 prongs because it will absolutely reduce your recurrence risk. Have a look at tumordna.com. Tumordna.com will teach you about, you could have your insurance pays for it in stage 3. And it is a blood test made out of your cancer cells looking for recurrence in your blood, right? If you are cured, you can't have your cancer DNA mutations in you anymore. So this could be a really gratifying way for you every 3 months to check your blood to make sure that this cancer is truly not on its way back.
I love to hear that. And the other thing that I love is that, we know for a fact, hands down, that at least half of all breast cancer cases are preventable. Your estimation, though, is much higher, somewhere in the 80 to even 90% ballpark, which is absolutely extraordinary, Dr. Funk.
Yes, it is. I truly believe that when you employ these dietary and lifestyle factors, you create a cell microenvironment conducive to health. Maximal health, and your body is craving it. If you do the right thing by your body, it just leave it alone, right? It knows what to do. It knows how to repair broken DNA. I don't. Your body does. That's amazing. So give it the tools it needs and craves. And that only comes from eating a plant-based diet, exercising. I want to see 5 hours a week of cardio, 2 20-minute sessions of heavy lifting, ladies. We have to maintain our bone and muscle mass. I want you to maintain ideal body weight, get to it slowly but surely if you're overweight now, and really curb and eliminate the alcohol. It is a pure toxin. It's not helping you. Sleep well, love well, forgive often, laugh much, and your body will do the rest.
Oh, I love that. That should be a sign just hanging up in your office. I love it. Exactly what you just said. So listen, letsbeatbreastcancer.org is the website with all of those resources and the list of all of our rallies coast to coast for the rest of October. And also check out Dr. Funk's website, pinklotus.com. So many more resources on there, including this whole robust community of breast cancer thrivers that you can band together with as you go through this journey together. Dr. Funk, you are awesome. I love you to death. Can't wait to see you again in person. And yeah, let's figure out a reason for me to come back out to California. Let's have dinner or something.
Let's do it. Love you right back. Mwah.
All right. Dr. Kristi Funk, as we talk about Let's Beat Breast Cancer. 80 to 90% of cases are preventable. If that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what will. But that is all the time that we have today, my friends. Thank you one more time to Dr. Funk for being here and to the crew behind the scenes for making the magic happen. Thank you, guys. And to all of you exam roomies, thank you for tuning in and watching and raising your health IQs as we all join together to beat breast cancer. And for everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We will talk to you again very soon. But until then, keep it plant-based.